You must stay at home. Stay at home.
Hello and welcome to Lockdown, hosted by Steve Bomford with Mike Davis-Marks. Our armed forces operate in challenging environments. Week by week, we'll explore what we can learn from their experiences.
Steve, I see you've got another member of the chosen race, a Submariner, for your next podcast interviewee.
I do indeed. But you don't know this one, I think.
Well, I think our paths have crossed. He's 24 years in the submarine service, mainly based up in Scotland. I'm sure our paths have crossed, and I do recognise his face, but I wouldn't say he's a close associate.
So the gentleman's name is John Lewis, and he's going to tell us all about a community interest company that he's set up called Males Tales, and a forthcoming Females Tales, all about supporting mental health. Okay, firstly, John, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
So you've got quite an interesting story here about something you've set up. But first of all, I'd like to know a little bit about your time in the Royal Navy. How long have you been in and what have you been up to?
So I've been in the Royal Navy submarine service for 24 years. Volunteered submarine service right away from the day I joined. I've spent time on Swift Shore and Astute class submarines, Vanguard class as well, right at the beginning. I've managed to travel quite a bit through being on SSNs. I've also had 2 years in Gibraltar. I've managed to see good parts of the world, but I've also had some really exciting periods at sea, some really good operational stuff to talk about. And I've also made some really good long life friends and skill sets throughout my time in the forces. But in the last, so that was like the first 21 years. In the last 2 or 3 years, my mindset and my focus has sort of changed away from that side of things. And it's obviously very important to the Royal Navy and the MOD, that sort of side of the Royal Navy. But for me personally, and it's what we're going to talk about, I believe, I've started to work towards a personal interest of mental health, and I'm starting to bring that to the forefront of my career now. And that's the sort of direction I've been going in for the last couple of years now.
Okay. Could you tell me a bit more about that? What's inspired you to sort of take on that mantle or that challenge?
Yeah. So just over 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now, I joined a section in HMND Clyde called the Recovery Cell, and basically what that is, when personnel are injured either or physically or mentally, or they've got serious discipline issues, they cannot sail with their unit for X reason. They get assigned to us while they're going through their medical or discipline procedures, and we look after their day-to-day life, their work and their welfare and their leave balances. And for anyone listening who's got a Royal Navy past or present, we are divisional officers. We're full-time divisional officers for these people. For anyone outside the Navy, it's like a functional line manager. We're a functional line manager. So in this position, it was all new to me, completely new. I'd only been operational up until then. I started coming into contact with personnel who had varying degrees of mental health issues, and quite a lot of them, in fact, didn't join with mental health issues. It's young guys and girls who would have a physical injury, and as that didn't heal or the treatment didn't progress the way they would like it, and they see their peers advancing, going on to sea, getting their career on track, and theirs doesn't the way they thought it would, you would then see it manifest into mental health, which obviously that's going to happen. It's quite obvious. Looking at it now in hindsight, but as I've seen this happen, I've came into contact and I speak to them quite on a regular basis. and we do our best. We do our best in that role that we can. But when it comes down to mental health and talking to people and getting people to listen, or getting people to speak to you so you can listen to them and understand them properly, you've got to get rid of the boundaries. And this is one of the things I noticed. And the military, as everyone knows, has a rank structure, and quite rightly, it needs it. It's probably the most important part of military life. It's got to be there. But in this case and circumstance, there's not everyone, but there's a lot of individuals won't speak to someone, not only of a higher rank, but of a lower rank, because they don't want to tell someone of a higher rank because they feel as if that might get used against them, or it's shown that they're not quite strong enough for the job, or it might harm their career prospects. And on the other hand, some people don't want to talk to people of a lower rank because they think it makes them look weak. And that, unfortunately, is just the way the human mind works. Whether we're military or not, there's nothing you can do about that, I'm afraid. So I went and set up a community interest company, it's called at the moment, and it's sort of halfway between just a volunteer group and a charity, called Mails Tales. I set that up on it first launched on the 2nd of November 2019. And it was purely for males to come and talk openly and share their past lived-in experiences and support each other, no matter their current circumstances. It's totally free. And from then, it's sort of grown arms and legs, really. We've very, very recently, we've actually had one now, a female version. So we had our first female tales last week.
John, do you mind me asking, is this for everybody, or is this for people serving ex-service? How does it work? Tell me a bit more about how it works.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't make that clear. So it's as much as the MOD up here are supporting it, and they're really supportive. We've given us accommodation and stuff, and allowing us to use their facilities. It's 100% a civilian organisation. It's not the military haven't got an input as such into it. It's not just for military personnel. Due to our geographical position, about 50%, I would say 40 to 50% of the people who use it, Mails Tales, are serving or veterans or families of, but that's sheerly because of our geographical location. It's totally civilian, and there are many people who use the organisation, come to the meetings, who have no connection whatsoever to the military.
So is this, when you say meetings, is this where people share their experiences and support one another as a group? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so obviously during COVID we had to revert back to online, but our primary method, which we've now reverted back to now, is just a face-to-face. We sit in a group. It's not a very formal structure. In fact, it's very informal, if I'm being honest with you. It's changed over time since we've been open 18 months, but that seems to be the way our members like it. It's very informal. There's a couple of the volunteers will lead the night, read out the rules and stuff, and then it's literally just a case of how's your week been, or if you get anything off your chest, and it goes by who speaks first. Honestly, we've had nights where people have been extremely emotional. They've admitted to attempting to take their own life. They've talked about sexual abuse, PTSD, and then on the other night, and on another night, we've just sat and yapped about line of duty and who H is. You know what I mean? So it just depends who talks first.
I'm desperate to know. Do you know the answer to who H is? No, but
I could tell you, but
oh yeah, I know. I know what happens in that program. So you say it's very informal. Has this been inspired by your own personal experiences at all outside the Navy, or is there you've got some knowledge of people that have been involved in that had challenges around mental health?
Yeah, I've had, well, family-wise, I've had my own issues. I've had severe sleep anxiety and issues. On my last operational unit, I spent 28 months out of 36 months at sea on it. And when I come back off that, I normally you go into watch a 6 on 6 off on a submarine. After a couple of weeks, that kicks back into normality. But for me, it took quite a while. I actually spent 16 days without a minute's sleep at one point. I was given by the sick bay, I was prescribed diazepam, and even that wouldn't knock me out. I just wasn't sleeping. It took a good 9-10 months before I could sleep again, before I realised that really it was all in my head. It's a habit, and that's what a lot of things and I found speaking to other people, when you're going through anxiety, or when you're going through issues that you're struggling to get over mentally, a lot of it, like you get physical habits, you get mental habits. Your mind goes into a habit. So you wake up first thing in the morning, am I going to sleep at night? Last thing at night, am I going to sleep? And your brain just constantly thinks like that for 24 hours a day. And it's all about breaking it. And I know I'm talking about sleeping, and there's a lot of more serious issues than that. But when it comes down to mental health issues, I feel that a lot of it can be helped with just breaking that habit of what your brain's been through. It's like watching a movie. If you were watching a film, or you watched a film and you thought it was rubbish, you wouldn't put it on again.
No.
You'd put something else on. But for whatever reason, us as humans, we like to catastrophize, like to think of the negative, and we like to keep hitting repeat on that DVD that's showing the rubbish film rather than sticking a different one on. Also, in fact, during the same trip, I was actually called back early because my son, who was 8 years old at the time, was self-harming, and he was talking about taking his own life as well. And he was 8 years old, and he was diagnosed with separation anxiety. So he would have been like 4.5, 5 when I started going away to sea, and I'd literally seen him. In that 3 years, just over 3 years, I'd probably spent about 9 months at home. But out of those 9 months, I had duties and courses as well. So I'd probably seen him for about 6 months and 3.5 years. Yeah. So
Wow, that's
see an 8-year-old going through that.
As a dad as
quite
well.
tough.
How did that must have made you feel pretty rubbish, if
Awful.
I'm honest.
Yeah, awful. Because there I'm doing my job, think I'm doing my bit, but then the people that are far more important to me than any job in the world are suffering because of me doing my job. So you've got to weigh up things sometimes. As important as the job is, as important as anybody's job is, doesn't matter what you do, they're all important. Sometimes work-life balance and other issues, personal issues, have got to come first. And that was the case then. So, and there's been other issues in family. I've had family members who've been on the brink of suicide. I've had ones who have had depression and been hospitalised. I think my family's ticked most of the boxes, to be fair. But that's gave me a good grounding of knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
Out there, I think.
Okay.
And it's
Firstly,
put me in a position where
is your son better now?
Yeah, and so the only thing I to try and use a sort of a metaphor or a reframe it, the way I talk to people about it. So he was diagnosed with separation anxiety. I don't know if you've ever had seasickness before, but if you've had seasickness, as soon as you step on shore again, because it's all related to the mind and moving about, as soon as you put your feet on the shore, you're almost instantly fine again. And it was the same with him with this separation anxiety. As soon as I was back in his life, that was it. Sorted.
Wow.
And that's not to say I don't know if he would or wouldn't get it again. Maybe now that he's older and he understands, because I was taken away from his life at 4.5, 5. Now that he's a good bit older, it's quite a while ago. The chances are he'd probably be all right now because he understands life a lot more. But you just don't know.
No. Well, I'm glad to hear it. So, not content with males' tales, you've also moved on to, if I get this right, females' tales.
Yeah. So it all comes under the same banner of males' tales. That started because I put out a call for volunteers because it's getting bigger. It's too big for me now. we've got a committee together. We've got a team of volunteers, and I put out a roll call, if you like, for volunteers last November, December-ish time. But I reckon about 80-90% of the people who wanted to help were female.
Right.
So I then, obviously they can volunteer, but not on the actual nights. They can't come into the hall. So I got back to them and suggested to them, if I put this together, if I get some training together, would you be interested in? I got enough feedback that to train up a full team and go ahead and launch this.
Well done.
And it launched last Tuesday evening. It's going to run twice a month, which is what Miles Tales did until it became big enough that it now runs every week. But I put it on there last Tuesday night. Obviously, I have absolutely no inkling what happened behind the door. I went into the building. I wasn't in the hall. I was in the building just for moral support for the ladies that was running it. Says I'll be out here just in case. But they never came out. There was 13 women turned up on the first night, which is probably just as big as we've ever had as a male attendance. And well, I don't know the details of what happened in there, but by all accounts, it was quite successful, which is quite a. Let's say I don't know what happened in there. My wife is helping running the females' tails, and we both said to each other, whatever happens in either night, we actually won't talk about it, and it keeps that, because the confidentiality and the trust of these groups are paramount. As soon as that's broke or it gets fragile, then people will no longer want to come. It's the reason some guys and now women come to that group, because they know whatever they say is going to be kept in them four walls. So it's absolutely paramount that the trust and rapport is built there and it's kept confidential.
It's amazing the power of people having not dissimilar, or should I say similar experiences, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. You were talking earlier on about how it's open for everyone and civilian and military. And the so common ground between the two is unbelievable, because we always harp on in the military about how we are specialist trained, our resilience, our focus, but we're not really. I mean, there are certain people now who are, once they've been in a certain amount of years, but we all came from the same place. We aren't a different breed. We haven't got different brains. We're not wired up differently, no matter what people say, no matter what recruitment adverts say. We're not. We were all civilian at one stage. None of us were born in the military. None of us were born with strong resilience. We were all trained that.
Yep.
And so anybody can be trained the exact same. We're no different. We're not a different species. In fact, if anything, there's quite a lot, without getting into detail, there's quite a lot of stuff that civilian guys come out with in these meetings that put into perspective some of the stuff the military guys are going through. Some of the issues that people in the civilian world go through are all, a lot of it is driven from poverty and maybe a lack of job or finding a job. That's a common one now with COVID. We've quite a few people who are in and out of jobs, people who've had jobs their whole life.
Has it got worse with COVID, do you think?
It's hard to tell, if I'm being absolutely honest with you. Different individuals. It's totally different for different individuals. When COVID first started, the first 4 or 5 weeks, we had one of our guys actually come out and say, you know what, this is brilliant. I said, what do you mean it's brilliant? He says, when we first went into lockdown, it's actually leveled the world to our level. I'm enjoying it, because this is the way I feel every day. I feel as if I'm locked in. I feel as if I can only go certain places. My life is totally bound by boundaries and a limitation of what I can do. I say, so I'm actually quite enjoying it. It's the whole planet's where I am. But now, the likes of this guy and others, their anxiety levels are starting to build up again, because people are now moving on or getting ready to move on, but they're going to be back where they were. So yeah, that can be quite difficult. And on the employment front, we're talking about people losing jobs, but for people I've spoke to, people are getting jobs, but they're dropping down a level from where they were. So this is one of the common grounds between the military, I think, or veterans. They're dropping down a level or two. With that, even though they've still got a job, it brings that loss of identity. They can't say, I am X, I am even anymore. And that, when I talk to veterans, there's guys that come to our group who are very successful in civilian world, but they still harp on about their time in the military. And it's that, again, that loss of identity. To a lot of us in the military, to turn around and say I'm the CEO or the managing director of X sounds brilliant. It sounds brilliant. But when they're out there, what they're saying is, yeah, but there's 10 million managing directors, there's 10 million CEOs. There's not too many warrant officer, nuclear engineer of the watches. There's not too many XOs of a submarine. Even though they're earning more money, they're providing better for their family, there's still that bit missing. And I think that's a major thing for veterans with mental health, the loss of identity.
One of the things that's come up in a lot of our podcasts is around sense of purpose. Being in the military specifically gives you a sense of purpose. If nothing else, it gives you a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
When you leave, it's really difficult to find anything that equates to the purpose and the meaning that you had whilst you were in. And if you're obviously experiencing effectively like a downgrade in job as well, that's just going to compound the issue, isn't it?
Oh yeah, massively, hugely. If you're preparing to leave the military, I mean, you know, all the resettlement programs and stuff are all there. But I definitely think that talking about your options to your family, actually speaking to people, because mental health doesn't give you a warning. It doesn't write you a letter 3 months prior to it and say, in 2 months' time, I'm going to write you a bigger letter, and in a month's time, there'll be a A5 poster on your wall saying, "Here I am." It's just going to hit you. And a lot of us don't talk about things because we've never been affected before, and so it's not going to affect us. And when it gets to that situation, when they do leave the military, it's better. A military saying is better to be prepared. So talk about it. Get your concerns out to your family. If you haven't got a family, there are groups like Mail's Tales. Come and speak to us, because we also can talk online as well. You don't have to be in our area. We've got an online group. Come and speak to us, or Females Tales, and speak to other people who've been through it before. They might have pointers, they might have coping mechanisms, they might have leads for you if it's a job you're looking for. They've all been, not all, but a lot of them have been there in that same situation. Sometimes it can just alleviate the problem. It's just letting go of that little bit of pressure before it bursts.
That's really important, but I'm drawn back to your idea of mental health writing a letter. I think that is such a great way of explaining. Oh, it doesn't. It's not like a bailiff or something like that, is it? No. Saying you've got to pay this money now, or else there's going to be some real problems. I think that's a really, really good way of explaining it. Plans for the future.
Yeah.
What are
they? So plans for the future. As far as military is concerned, I'm getting put into a new post up here to help support Submariners with mental health. Can't go into that in too much detail yet because the details haven't been finalised. But that I'm going to be helping on that side of things. Out with the military, Males Tales and Females Tales, it's getting bigger. I'm hoping to collaborate with some organisations to make it bigger. I've been talking to some people and want to broaden it out with the area we're in at the moment as well. But it's all about getting funds. I want to make it a charity as well. That is my ultimate goal, to get it an actual official charity. But small steps at a time, really. The ultimate goal is to make Males Tales and Females Tales a charity that's available for all, bar none. We want it to be an inclusive organisation. That it doesn't matter what your background is, no matter what your current circumstances are, it's somewhere you feel you can come and either be supported, or even if you're in a good place, because every time people mention mental health, you think poor mental health. but it's not. Health is health. You can have good health, and if you're feeling brilliant, tell somebody. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? So if you want to come and just support someone, if people are asking to be a volunteer, you don't actually have to put your name down as a volunteer. You just come to one of the nights or come online and if you sit and listen to someone who has been through an issue for 10 minutes, but actually listen to them, don't just stare at them and think what you're going to put on for your dinner when you go home. Actually listen to them, hear what they're saying. That 10 minutes could change that person's week, month, maybe their life.
Yeah.
So just come along and listen. And that's it. There's nothing. Loads of people do loads of. I put all my people through, my volunteers through courses, mental health first aid, awareness, suicide, assist, coaching skills. But see, to be honest with you, you don't need it. This is stuff we've been doing since cavemen, talking and listening. That is it. and that is the beauty of it. And for some reason, somewhere down the pipeline, we've all lost that. We're either scared to talk or we don't want to listen.
It's like we're all really connected, aren't we? With all this technology. I'm in Portsmouth, you're in Scotland. It's amazing we can do all this. But in some ways, it kind of, we obviously with social media and all the rest of it, you actually feel real. I mean, COVID has made this worse, in my opinion. We feel so distant from people. You just sort of sitting down and having a chat about how you're feeling. To your group of friends. I can't remember the last time I did that, to be quite honest. I don't necessarily feel the need to, but it's just not part of the way we conduct ourselves anymore, is it?
No, it's not. It's not at all. As I say, we went back to face now. And the group sizes are all right. They're sort of the same average we've always had. But we're actually having discussions that I think we're probably isn't definite yet, but I think we're going to revert to maybe a week face-to-face and a week online for that reason. There's people who do feel safer in their own home, in their own environment. And whether that's through what they're going through or whether it's COVID or a mixture of them both combining, who knows? But there's people like the emotional connection and there's people that quite simply don't. So I think we're going to put that offer on the table for our members. We're going to put it to them and see what they want. But I think that's probably the way we're going to go.
Do you know, one of the things that we run or have run in the past is artist talks. It's all been about war art and the history of art and war and how it relates. So we did 10 episodes, but we've had participants. It's done as a webinar, so you can't see each other. So you're watching, it's a bit like a TV show, but so you can't see the other participants or talk directly to them. And we've had participants say to us, they prefer that. That's kind of how they live their life. They may be married or what have you, but they're really quite comfortable with that. And when we've run workshops, say around drawing, it's by the same artist that did the talks, they've not always easily sort of transitioned from one to another. Some have just thought, no, I'd rather just do the talks and remain anonymous. I enjoy that, and that works for me. Never would have expected that. Never.
And that's the same with like mental health. Well, it is a resilience tool. If that's what works for you, that's what works for you. I mean, there's loads of talk about how physical fitness is a fantastic tool for combating mental health and getting you in your own space. And it is, and I'm a huge advocate for it. I like going for a run. I like going to the gym. I've run marathons and half marathons and stuff in the past. But it's not for everyone. And so there needs to be other avenues for people to use. There's people, I know the military like to drive down the physical fitness thing, but some people like to work. And if that's what they want to do, then let them do it. Because if you drag someone up a hill on a Wednesday afternoon, I mean, 90% of your ship's company will be up for it, but there'll be those one or two who are walking up that hill thinking, I'm going to have to work longer tomorrow. I'm going to have to come an hour early. I'll stay an hour later. So, and I know I'm probably going against what a lot of people listening to this are for, but you shouldn't be forcing people to do it. I know we've got fitness tests and they should be that fit, but there needs to be options for resilience. And we always harp on about the physical fitness, but stuff like whether it's an art class or a yoga class or nature walks or low-level fitness, this is the kind of thing we should be bringing in, because not everybody wants to do a circuit. Not everybody wants to run up a hill or go cycling. It can bring on anxieties. It can bring on issues. So I don't believe we should be forcing the issue as long as people are fit enough to do their job. But that's a different subject. Probably got my knuckles wrapped for that one. But there you go.
But more generally, I think you're right, aren't you? It's about finding what people enjoy and how they express themselves, isn't it? And not everybody wants to run a marathon or climb a mountain or whatever it may be. They may be through the arts or whatever it might be. It might be or cooking or whatever their thing is. It's important that they discover that, hopefully, and find a way to express themselves, I think. Anyway, I would agree with you, absolutely. Is there any requests on your part for help? Is there any information you want to give out? What I can do, we'll write a description of the podcast that people read to find out what it is before they listen to it. So we can put your website or Facebook or whatever it is that you want the details in there. But is there any other requests for volunteers or any other shout outs for help you want to do?
Well, I'll never ever knock back anybody who wants to volunteer. But what we do need, because there's a lot of big charities, big national charities, basically sorting up the money. So if anybody wants to do any fundraising or come into any sort of collaboration with us, then we can do that. Myself as well, I'm a qualified focus, resilience and anxiety life coach. I'm also a qualified NLP practitioner. So I can collaborate with people. I can give talks if they want to donate money, and we can do a bit of thing where I'll talk or I'll speak to them. I've been given one-on-one sessions now as well under the guise of John Lewis Coaching. But as far as Mails Tales is concerned, so website's mailstales.co.uk, email address is mailstales@yahoo.com. We're all over social media, every platform, I think. In fact, I think my daughter's about to release a TikTok thing. She mentioned that to me, and I just went, "Nah, it's your bag. I'm not getting involved in that." So I think we're going to go on to TikTok, but it will be negative me. I had a little blast at that last time during lockdown with a couple of stupid dances. You can probably find that on Google with me. But,
John, our listeners will not be able to see this, but you are wearing a Christmas jumper because you've said you're in your daughter's room and it was a bit cold. So if you're going to do the TikTok thing, I think it's got to be something to do with Christmas because it's a fantastic Christmas jumper.
All right, thanks very much. Yeah, it's a bit chilly in here, so I actually thought this was slightly later than what it was, so I quickly grabbed this jumper. And then when you said it wasn't going to be on video, I thought, nice one. Because I'm sitting in this, and I showed you it, but you've mentioned it now anyway.
I did say I was going to.
There you go. You did
so,
indeed.
I'd just like to say well done. I think the work you're doing is fantastic, and I wish you absolutely every success. And I'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast. And as I say, we'll put all the details, wherever you send me, I'll ask for it after we finish recording. Send it over and we'll put that in the description. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for asking. Thank you very much.
So, Mike, that was quite an interesting chat, wasn't it?
Really interesting, Steve. And I learnt a lot during that. A lot of this has all happened since I left the service. But from the statistics that he was talking about, boy, is it needed.
It does sound like it, doesn't it? And his own personal circumstances as well. I thought that was really revealing.
He was very open to you. I thought that was really good to be as open as he was about his own personal issues, not just the sleep anxiety he had after a demanding operational period, but also 16 days without sleep, I think he said he went at one point. I'm not sure how you cope with that, but he obviously has. And then obviously his wider family, including his son. And I'm glad you asked the question about was his son better with a positive response to that. But that's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know how that must have, as a father, I don't know how that would have made him feel. It must have been terrible for him.
Yeah, interesting. But not only has he got his own experience to it, but also, he's got into that role within the Navy, which is fantastic to see the Navy reacting like that and doing things like this and supporting him. So, I think Males Tales and now Females Tales, which has been added to it, sounds a very exciting prospect.
Yes, a very positive step, and not just aimed at military communities either.
Not just aimed at military communities. I mean, at its heart, it's a mental health peer-to-peer support group. But when he talked about, the size of the problem, because he said he launched in November 19, which is obviously just a couple of months before the pandemic sort of struck the world. What a time to launch a company, but then probably very timely in terms of the amount of stress that, for some people, COVID-19 has caused.
Yes, in some ways, it's of its moment, isn't it? I think the demand is probably going to be considerable.
I think you're right. I had a look at his website whilst you were interviewing him. And on the problem, he talked about in the area where he lives, 833 suicides in 2019, of whom 620 were men, and that is an increase on the previous year by a factor of about 10%, I think. I was staggered by that. I had no idea that there were so many suicides in that country. Or that the vast majority of them were men.
Yeah, I have read statistics before saying that younger men, particularly, are particularly vulnerable to making attempts to commit suicide.
Well, he says under 45 is the real. Presumably, once you get to 45, life becomes, you've got set in your ways, and you've got a bit of money under your belt, and a bit more savage. Maybe even the children have left home. I wish they would in my case.
I bet they want to as well, to be frank.
Yeah, I've drawn that out a bit. I can relate to him about the operational tours and the amount of time at sea you spend and how little you see of your children. And it's particularly in the submarine service. But I know the submarine service is doing great things to try and counteract that. And it sounds like things like Mail's Tales are also doing a lot to help as well.
Yes, I think they are. They're good. He's good friends with Mr. Audacious. I've forgotten his name. Hugo
Mitchell-Hegg.
Yes.
Well, Hugo is a mental health champion for the submarine service as well, so they would know each other and they would work together. So that's great. He had a good insight about all of this, looking backwards about making sure you got your work-life balance right. If you spend so much time that your little 4.5-year-old boy doesn't see you for, the majority of a 3-year period, then you can understand how that can be quite traumatic for some. So I think, he was spot on the money there. And I always have a phrase, which I may have bored you with in the past, which is, no one on their deathbed ever says, I wish I'd spent more time in the office.
You haven't told me that one, but that's your one strike. Thank you very much.
Don't I get 3? Normally it's 3 in baseball.
You know what a tyrant I am.
Yeah, you are. Listeners, I can attest to the the tyranny that's going on here. Anyway, he also spoke about resilience. I thought that was really interesting. And he made a very astute comment that you're not born resilient, but it's something you can be trained. And obviously, if you've been through a period of stress, then you can build up resilience to that, but it needs to be done in a safe way, in a safe environment, for it to be successful.
Yes, it's quite interesting around the support network as well, and it's quite similar to what Mark Ormrod was talking about getting a mentor, about getting someone that can perhaps give you some insights, advice, and guidance, through lived experience very often as well.
You're absolutely right. I mean, John's plea, his call to arms, was if you can just spare 10 minutes to come and listen to somebody, that can make all the difference in the world. I thought that was a very powerful statement.
Yeah, I'd agree. Nothing more powerful than someone that's been through a similar situation, or someone who inspires you onto greater things.
Indeed. Towards the end of the interview, you sort of started to ask him about, we're coming out of lockdown, where we are at the moment, and how will that affect the way that the group, the Males Tales, Females Tales group is. And he was talking about doing a hybrid model, perhaps 1 week of face-to-face and 1 week of online, which caters for those that are slightly more nervous about coming into groups, face-to-face groups right at the moment. Even if infection rates are down, you never know what might happen in the future. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yes, and I think doing things online is also, kind of not entirely risk-free, but the level of commitment required isn't quite so considerable. You can do it from your living room. You don't need to travel anywhere. And, the anxiety of walking into that group is perhaps addressed a little.
Yeah. Interestingly, I think this podcast series has really illustrated the amount of good work that's going on that many of us don't know anything about. So I really hope that this series just highlights, all the good work that lots and lots of people are doing, and the support the Royal Navy and Royal Marines Charity are giving to them as well, because they're behind a lot of this. And it's fantastic that we're sort of, if you like, opening the lid or peeling back the covers to discover what's going on and all the great work that people are doing.
Absolutely. I think what we're learning is there's a lot more support out there than we realise, and the hurdle that people need to get over is asking for that help sometimes.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Mike. That was great, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. The Royal Navy and Royal Marines Charity exists to support sailors, Marines and their families for life. If you or someone you know could do with some support, give them a call on 023 93 87 1568 or drop them an email on support@rnrmc.org.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe.